A bill that has made its way through the legislature is now the subject of a lawsuit. A growing number of cities are joining the effort to stop the state's sanctuary law from taking effect. Just days after Governor Abbott signed the bill into law, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a preemptive measure asking a U.S. district court to rule the law constitutional. Now, the bill allows peace officers to question the immigration status of people they detain or arrest and punishes department heads and elected officials who don't cooperate with federal immigration agents. And joining us this morning, immigration attorney Eric Cedillo. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with just the challenges to the so-called sanctuary cities law. What do they seek to do? Who's doing it, and what do they seek to do?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Governor Abbott signs the bill on Sunday evening, and then actually either that night or that morning, the state of Texas files a lawsuit against the city of Austin, the mayor, city council, things of that nature, asking basically for a declaratory judgment, whether or not the law is constitutional. That's the peremptory strike that you're referring to. They file that. Now the Austin has the obligation to file an answer, a response. And just a couple of days ago, or maybe even yesterday, Austin City Council got together and they passed a measure that allows them to do that, to affirmatively respond to the state's action.
Okay.
So what makes the law, in your view, well, is it constitutional? And if not, what makes it unconstitutional?
I think it has some problems. I think it has some issues specifically with respect to the 10th Amendment. You've got a situation wherein we've already seen there's actually two lawsuits going on right now. The first that was filed by the state of Texas, that's down in Austin. And then the second lawsuit was filed by LULAC, League of United Latin American Citizens, down in San Antonio. And what they suggest, they're representing a city down in Maverick County that is basically maintaining that the 10th Amendment has been violated in the sense that the federal government cannot force or conscribe states to do the function of the federal government. And of course, immigration is that function. Now, the question is whether or not the state can kind of step in and say, okay, municipalities, okay, local government, we're not saying the federal government is making you do this, we're telling you that it has to be. So that's a situation that might be a little closer question. But the same issues still arise in terms of whether or not they're being forced to do the bidding of the federal government. So I think there's maybe some issues with respect to that.
And I was reading that in Travis County, the DA is actually giving out letters to certain undocumented people that could help them in a certain situation if they're pulled over or stopped, and maybe could shield them from deportation. What do you know about that?
I hadn't heard that, but it makes sense in terms of what they're trying to do. With the city council, in terms of what Austin has done, is basically said, look, these police chiefs, a number of police chiefs have said that this law makes things unsafe for the undocumented. We want to ensure as municipalities that everyone reports crimes. There's been a quelling, I think, of reporting in the Houston area among the undocumented community because of fears of approaching the police department. So it's a really scary thing for a whole lot of folks.
Okay, bottom line here. Do you expect parts or all of this law to go away?
I definitely think that parts are going to be enjoined. They're going to be stopped by one of the judges in one of the jurisdictions, specifically with respect to the provisions regarding the show me your papers. That has actually been kind of vetted by the U.S. Supreme Court, so that might actually see some challenges with respect to the actual implementation, the racial profiling component that people are fearful of. But as far as the cities are concerned, I think the 10th Amendment preclusion or the preemption by federal government, it may have some issue with respect to that.
Okay. All right. Well, finally this morning, a Texas congressman is calling for the impeachment of the president. Congressman Al Green of Houston believes James Comey was let go because of his investigation of possible collusion between Trump's presidential campaign and Russia. Here's just part of his speech on the floor of the House.
Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow this to go unchecked. The president is not above the law. Impeachment does not mean that the president will be found guilty. It simply means that the House of Representatives will bring charges against the president. It's similar to an indictment, but not quite the same thing. Once the president is impeached, then the Senate can have a trial to determine the guilt or innocence of the president, whether he is guilty or not guilty, to be more specific. But the House of Representatives has a duty that it can take up, and that is of impeachment.
And of course, we're going to keep a close eye on that. That's a big talker among a lot of folks. All right, well, thanks for joining us. And thank you so much to immigration attorney Eric Cedillo for being here with us. We'll see you next Sunday, and Meet the Press is coming up next.